Okay, hi everybody. We're going to be doing solving equations with variables on both sides. We want to remember that the first step is always to get the variables simplified, the sides simplified, and then choose which side you want to put your variables. So let's get started. This is an equation, it has variables on both sides. And I think I'm going to start out, I'll get to that later. Let's just start by thinking about what we could do in order to get the variables on the same side. And one of the first things you can do is you are allowed to add or subtract a number of variables from both sides. And some people automatically choose the smaller of the two numbers. And for example, they would want to subtract 5n from both sides. Now that will work, but it creates an extra step. And let me show you it's a little faster and easier to add a negative 7n to both sides or subtract 7n. I prefer to think of it as adding a negative rather than subtracting. 7n plus negative 7n, or 7n minus 7n, is 0. And we have 2 over here. 5n plus negative 7n is negative 2n. And then we can divide by negative 2 on both sides, and we're done. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is 1, and n is equal to negative 1. Now I'm going to show you a weird mistake that happens fairly often if it shows up. We now have negative 10 plus j is equal to negative j. And I want to add a negative j to both sides. Again, a very common error would, not necessarily an error, but to make it more difficult, I could add j to both sides. The problem with doing that is if I add j to both sides like this, then what I end up with is 0 on the right and 2j plus negative 10 on the left. And then I still have 2 more steps to go. If I add negative j, however, to both sides, if I add a negative j to this side and a negative j to this side, I have 2 negative j's, or negative 2j. And on this side, j plus negative j is 0, and I have a negative 10. And then I just have 1 more step, divide by the negative 2. And j is equal to positive 5. So let's see if we can, now this one is really nice. This is a one-step equation. Negative 9q plus 10 is equal to negative 8q. And all we're going to do is add 9q to both sides. And we end up with 10 is equal to q. Not true. All right, so we've got 10. Here's one that, well, I think I'm just going to go ahead and keep solving. This is a good example. We've got negative 7, negative 2b, sorry. I did a little tail on my b. Negative b. And I'm going to add 2b to both sides. And we get negative 7 is equal to 1b, all by itself. So b is 7. Negative 7. Sorry about that. Negative 7 would be the answer for that one. I always want to make sure I miss one after all. Negative 5m is equal to negative 6m plus 2. And I'm going to add 6m to both sides, and I'm done. I get m equals 2. I'm just adding 6m. I'll actually get this one right this time. M is equal to 2. Now we subtract 8w from both sides, and we get w equal to 7. Let's see if I get any other ones that look more interesting. We subtract c from both sides and get c equals 9. I want to give us some easy ones to make sure I got it. This time we're going to add, okay, now we've got a couple of choices here. Let's take a look. When you have m's on, or variables on both sides, you have two choices. We could subtract 7m from both sides or add a negative 7m to both sides, or we can add 1m to both sides. For most students, and I've got to say that this is probably true for 90% of students, they'll have fewer errors if there's positives instead of negatives involved. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to add m to both sides. Now, some people always want to have their m's end up on the left side or their variables on the left side. That's fine. Doesn't matter. We have negative 6 then is equal to 10 plus 8m. And then we're going to subtract 10 from both sides or add a negative 10. It means exactly the same thing. Subtracting 10 and adding negative 10 is the same. We're going to divide by 8, and we're going to get negative 2. Remember to divide by 8 on both sides. In this one, I'm going to add 4r to both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and write it. It's supposed to be an r right there. Equals negative r minus 8. And I can add 4r to both sides. Again, I could have just simply added r to both sides, and it would have worked out as well. I get 1 is equal to 3r minus 8. I'm going to add 8 and divide by 3 and get 3. Adding 8 gives me 9. Dividing by 3 gives me 3. In this one, I'm going to subtract 6k from both sides, or add a negative 6k to both sides. I want to show you an error, and I see this a lot. I'll see students do this, and here's the problem with doing this. I know and you know that you mean minus 6k, and they write the k down here, and they write the negative 1k down here, and they write the equals 9, and they say, well, it really doesn't matter. But here's the problem with doing this right here, this little piece right here that I'm talking about. The problem with subtracting 6 from 6k is that you can't. You cannot subtract 6 from 6k. You can subtract 6k, and yes, you can say, well, I know what I mean, and you know what I mean, so it doesn't matter. But the problem with doing that is that eventually you will start adding things like these together, and it's a really bad habit to get into. Anyway, we're finishing it by dividing by negative 1 on both sides, and we have k is equal to negative. In this one, this is interesting. I have my w's out of order. Doesn't matter. Getting some ants for some reason. I'm going to subtract 3w from both sides, or add a negative 3w. It doesn't matter. I like to use both of those things interchangeably because subtraction is adding the opposite. 3w minus 3w is 0. I have negative 8 is equal to 2w plus 10. You have 2 more steps. You need to subtract 10 from both sides. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And negative 18 is equal to 2w. And when we divide by 2, we get negative 9. Sounds familiar? In this one, got a couple of choices, actually. In fact, we've got several choices. What most people do is they simplify both sides separately, and then they start adding or subtracting the variables first, and then do the solving steps. You can do a couple of things at once. I'm going to add this 10 and 5 together at the same time. And I'm also going to go ahead and add the 2m to both sides. So negative 2m minus 9 is equal to 10 plus 2m plus 5. I'm going to add these together at the same time, and I can add them out of order because there's no subtractions going on. And I'm also going to add 2m to both sides. So I get 4m plus 15 on this side of the equation. And on this side of the equation, we have a negative 2m, plus 2m is 0, and we have a negative 9 by itself. We then need to subtract 15 from both sides and get the negative 24. The reason I like to add a negative rather than subtract is if you look at this, it looks as if there's no operation going on. It looks like I have a positive 15 and a negative 15, but nothing's happening. By adding a negative 15 to both sides, it makes it clear what's actually happening. We're going to divide by 4 in the last step, and we're going to get negative 6. Oops. Didn't mean to do that. Thing on there. All right. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and simplify this side. So I have 4u minus 1 is equal to 9 minus u. Negative 6u plus 5u is minus u. And then I'm going to add u to both sides. By the way, that is 1u, even though you don't see the 1. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't cancel that. That's 5u minus 1 is equal to, that's 9 minus 0, which is 9. Then I add 1 and divide by 5 and get 2. I'm going to move a little faster this time. I'm going to subtract 8y from both sides, and I get negative 15 is equal to y plus 2. Be careful. Subtract the 2, and you get negative 17. In this one, I'm going to subtract 10t from both sides and then divide by negative 2 and get the negative 10. It doesn't hurt to do these in your head if they're that easy. In this particular case, I definitely want to write it out. So I've got 20, and then I've got negative 6b plus 18b, gives me plus 12b. Don't forget to put the tail on your b. I'm going to add 20 to both sides and get 40. And I'm going to subtract 12b from both sides and get 2b. It's not necessary to always write down what you're doing because we know most people are able to do this in their head. They know that we added 20 to both sides and got the 40, and we subtracted or added a negative 12b to both sides and got the 2b. And again, you don't have to write the division on both sides. You just have to know that it's happening. Divide by 2 on both sides, and you get b equals to 20. Now we've got some decimals going. We've got the negative 12.4k and a negative 18k, and I've got 12.88. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the 12.4k to 18, which gives me 5.8k. Sorry, negative 5.8. And then I'm going to have to divide by negative 5.8. This is one of those cases where it's probably nice to just have a calculator handy. Occasionally it's useful. I'm going to go ahead and do it by hand. We're going to put the 5.8 into 12.88. I'm not including the negative, but I need to remember to include it at the end, but I could put it on. It's not that important. Move the decimal one place so that it's at the end. Move the decimal one place. And remember, it goes straight up. Now 58 goes into 128 two times. And 2 times 58 is 116. And I subtract 6 from 8, and I get 128. And it looks like we're going to get, interesting, 58 goes into 128 two times. And I'm going to subtract 116 again. And I get 120. It's like getting some more decimal places here. That's odd. Oh, I didn't see. There's the problem right there. I'm missing an 8, aren't I? Let's see. No, it's correct. That's negative 5.8, all right. Yeah, it's fine so far. Don't have enough space though. Let's see. I've got 116 is going to give me 4. Looks like it's a pretty ugly decimal. I'm going to grab my calculator and see. Sorry, I should have had it set up from the beginning here. Anyway, wow, 12.88 divided by 8. Wow. Huh. Did it say to round it? No. Well, maybe I made a mistake from the beginning. Let's see. 18 minus, oh, oops. I saw those 8s. Sorry about that, guys. God. 5.6 would be nice. Anyway, so definitely nice to have a calculator handy. Prove my point. 12.88 divided by 5.6. 2.3. That's negative 2.3. Sorry about that, folks. I should have been more careful. Negative 2.3. Made a silly error. Here's a few more. Okay, now we've got some decimals going. I'm going to go ahead and add. This in my head. Hopefully, I won't make another silly error. That's definitely a 7.7. But I'm going to use my calculator to double check. I've got a minus 12.17. I first added these two together, and that's equal to negative 8.1 p plus 19.43. Space here. So I'm going to double check my work, make sure I didn't make a mistake. 0.6 minus 5.9, which is 7.7 p. Then I'm going to add the 8.1 p to both sides. And that's going to be 15.8 p minus 12.17 is equal to 19.43. We're going to add the 12.17 and then divide by the 15.8. And I'm going to go ahead and do it with the calculator just to speed things up again. Just a bit. That's 12.17. The problem with doing it with the calculator is that you just turn your brain off. Again, and divide by 15.8, which looks like it's going to be 2. Sure enough, it is. So I added the 12.17, the 15.8 p is equal to, and we can see that's 0. It's a 6, and it's a 1. It's 31.6. And when you divide by 15.8, it just so happens it goes in there 2 times. So p is equal to 2. This one, we are going to add the 6.2q, which is going to give you 10q. And I'm going to subtract the 18.36, which is going to give me, 18 is going to give me 34, I believe. I'm going to double check and make sure. So I add 3.8. Oh, I can't. I don't need a calculator for that. 18.36 plus 15.64 is equal to 34. And when you divide by 10, you can think of this as moving the decimal 1 place to the left to get the 3.4. Another way to think of this is that 34 tenths is 3 4/10. Ways to write it. 4. What? Oh, my brain is not working today. What did I do? Yeah, I know. But, did I forget the negative? Oh my God, I lost my negative. Okay, that begs the question why it's important to actually write your workout. So I lost my negative as I was working this out. When I add 1.8u to both sides, I'm going to end up with, looks like negative 2.5u. And when I add 14.74 to both sides, I'm going to end up with a positive. It looks like it's going to be 34.5, I'm going to guess. I think it's correct. I'm going to double check and make sure I have it correct, but you need to watch those negatives. So we've got, and that's embarrassing, negative 4.3 plus 1.8 gives us negative 2.5u, and 19.76 plus 14.74, it is 34.5. And we're going to divide by negative 2.5. Now, instead of just grabbing my calculator and automatically always doing the problem with the calculator, I'm going to show you something. Anytime you have decimals like this, 34.5, I need to remember that that is a negative 2.5. My answer is going to be negative. I could leave the negative in the denominator, put it in the numerator, or put it out in front like it does in your book. Probably the worst situation is putting it out in front like this, like your book does. What I'm going to do now, and actually I'm going to put it in the numerator. That's really where it belongs. What I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by 2 in the numerator and the denominator. That is so I can simplify this fraction. 34.5 times 2 is going to give you 69. And 2.5 divided by 2 is 5. And that is a negative. And I can divide 5 into 69, and I'm going to get 13.8. So this is negative 13.8. Now you could just grab your calculator and push the buttons, but it's always good to just do a little bit of extra practice and make sure that you're practicing your arithmetic. And sure enough, I get negative 13.8. Easy to forget your negative signs if you don't actually write them down. All right. Lots of decimals here. They want to make sure I know my decimals now. I've got a negative 16.6b, and I'm going to end up adding 19.2b to both sides. And when I add that, it looks like I'm going to get, looks like 2.8b. And like I said, I'm going to use my calculator just to make absolutely sure I didn't do a dumb error. And I'm going to have negative 9.23 and a negative 14.09, and I'm also going to get a negative 19.58. Now, if I didn't happen to have a calculator handy, what I would do is, in my head, I'd add the 8, the 9, and the 3, which is 20, write down the last 0 and carry the 2 in my head, then add the 2 and the 2 and the 9 and the 1 and the 2 carry and so on. The 2 carry plus the 2, it makes 13, so I write down the 3 and then carry the 1, and I'll add it that way. I'm going to go ahead and use my calculator just to make it easy. I have a 9.23 plus 14.09 plus 19.58, 42.9. And it is negative, don't forget the negative, and divide by 2.8. B equals, oh, I wanted to check my silly work over here, make sure I didn't make a dumb error. Negative 16.6b plus 19.2b, 2.6. Oh, there it is. Seems to give me trouble for some reason. All right, so we've got 42.9 divided by 2.6, we get 16, negative 16.5, it looks like. Now, if you're doing these with me, clearly it's a good idea to try them yourself. Now this time, I'm going to add 11.1 to both sides, which gives me 0.3v, and my negative 4.32 remains over here. All I did was add 11.1 to both sides. Hopefully I didn't make a mistake on that one. And divide by 0.3 or 0.3. And should I do it in my head? I should. 144 with the decimal here. It is a negative, so I am going to use my calculator just to check it. No. Wow. I forgot to move the decimal over. Dang. Yep, that's why we use a calculator. Negative 14.4. Put my decimal in the wrong place. There it is. And we've got these two need to be added together. You're probably going to use a calculator. I am going to subtract 16.2g from both sides. Now, it just so happens that that's just 2g. And I'm also going to subtract 18.74 from both sides. And if I'm using the calculator, it isn't such a bad thing to just put all the numbers all together there. So I have negative 15.83 plus negative 18.74 plus a positive 3.37, negative 31.2. And if I divide by 2 on both sides, I get negative 15.6. I don't need a calculator for that. Hopefully I didn't misinterpret it there. 15.6. In this one, we're going to subtract the 6.5j from both sides, which is going to give us negative 1.1j, I believe, is equal to 16.94 divided by negative 1.1. $16.4, 15.4. And it is negative. Don't forget to include your negatives. Hopefully I'm not talking too low. We're finally to the 90. It looks like I have a few left here, unfortunately. So, I like this one. So this time, this is a very, very easy one to miss. One of the most common errors in algebra. I'm going to show you what it is. If you've watched any of my videos, you may have heard that I say over and over again that we never do subtraction. And there's a subtraction going on here. And I want to show you another reason why we don't do subtraction. A very common mistake for this particular problem is to distribute. Everybody see that that's a positive 9 and that's a subtraction? Right here is a subtraction, right there is a subtraction. And I distribute a positive 9. That is wrong. You will get the wrong answer because this has to mean the same thing as plus a negative 9. You must distribute the negative 9. Another common error is to think, oh, I'm going to follow order of operations left to right, and I'm going to add this negative 3 and this negative 9 together. You cannot do that first because this is multiplication. Negative 9 times both parts of this expression inside the parentheses. You must multiply the negative 9 times both parts because multiplication is more important than addition. To be very careful. It's easy to make mistakes on these. But the most common error is to look at this and see a positive 9 and distribute a positive 9. You must distribute the negative 9, and this is what's going to happen. I'm going to get negative 3 plus negative 18z, and then I'm going to get a positive 45. I absolutely guarantee the answer, one of the answers that's going to be on a multiple choice test will be if you use a negative 45 here and a positive 8, well, negative 18, because the minus sign will still be there. Very common mistake. I would show you the other weird mistake that comes up, but it's so strange that I think I'm going to dedicate an entire little separate lesson for it. One of the things you want is you want numbers on one side, variables on the other. And if I add 12z to both sides, I'm just going to make more work for myself because I still have to add the 45 with the negative 3. And if I add 12z, notice I'm going to have 0 on one side and I'm going to have variables and numbers on the other side. So a good idea is to go ahead and add the 18z to both sides. And I'm going to go ahead and write that down. There we go. So negative 3 plus 45 is 42. This is 0. And I get 6z. And then z is equal to 7. Of course, I'm going to divide by 6. In this one, you need to distribute your 5. That's negative 45k. I'm distributing the 5 to both parts. When I multiply 5 times negative 20, I get negative 100. Minus 1 is negative 121. Might as well put those together. And on the other side, we've got a 16 and an 18, which is 34. Now I've got two choices. I can add the 45k and subtract the 34, or I can add the 18k and add the 121. About the same either way. I'm going to go ahead and add the 18K. I normally tell you to watch out for negatives and to maybe add the 45K. But in this particular case, I think this is actually going to make it a little bit easier. Now, a lot of people are going to do this step, and then they're going to go to the next step, and then they're going to add the 121. But I'm going to go ahead and do it at the same time. It's not wrong. It's just looks a little bit funky, but watch. That's 0, and that's 0, and I can add these together, which gives me, looks like negative 27 maybe. Yeah, negative 27. And over here, I get 155 when I add the 121. And I'm going to divide by negative 27. Does it go in more than 5? Yes, it does. Did I make a mistake? Let's see. Well, I clearly didn't make a mistake there. Let's see, 45 minus 18, of course, is 27. And 34, 34, sure enough. And 121, which is correct, is 155. 155 divided by 27. What? No. Must have made an error somewhere. Or else they did. Negative 45K minus 101. God, there we go. Hard to see your errors when you make a silly mistake. There it is. That's going to be 135, and sure enough, it goes in negative 5 times. Dang it, I took a picture of it now. Maybe it'll let me write it. No. I know what to do. I'll go to this. Get rid of that. There we go. This is negative 5. Sorry about that. Sometimes technical difficulties get in my way. All right. We're going to distribute the 2 to both parts right here. Distribute the 2. And I'm going to go ahead and add the negative 18 with that negative 30. So I get negative 20W is equal to negative 32W. And this is a minus 30 minus 18 is minus 48. We're going to add the 32W to both sides. And we get 12W is equal to negative 48. I said 48. There we go. And divide by 12 on both sides and you get your negative 4. In this one, we have 2 distributions going on. Look at that trick right there. There's a negative 4 that I have to distribute. And here's another negative 4 that I have to distribute. If you don't distribute the negative, you will get it wrong, especially for this side. A lot of people distribute a positive 4 there and just leave the subtraction in place, which is going to give you the wrong answer. That is negative 4c. Negative 4 times 19 is positive, looks like 76, equals negative 20. That's a plus 40c. And finally, a negative 80, or a minus 80, or plus a negative 80. And that is 40c minus 100 is equal to negative 4c plus 76. And C, sorry about that. And we're going to go ahead and add the 4c to both sides. And I'm going to go ahead and add the 100 to both sides. And I get 0, 176 is equal to 44c plus 0. Dividing by 4 gives me 4. 44 dividing by 44 gives me 4. 44 goes into 176 4 times. Almost done. Sorry about all the errors. Some people are going to be tempted to try to divide by 8 on both sides, but then you're going to get a fractional b, and it's going to be kind of a headache. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute the 8. I'm going to have 12b is equal to negative 32b minus 88. Make sure that you multiply the 8 times both terms. That's called the distributive property of multiplication over, in this case, subtraction. I'm going to add my 32b to both sides, and I'm just going to do it in my head. Add 32 to both sides, you get 44b is equal to negative 88. Don't forget the negative is still associated with the 88 there. Dividing by 44 gives you b equals negative 2. Okay, again, I'm glad that they included a lot of these. You need to distribute the negative 3 in this case. So I've got 7j minus 12j. You could put plus a negative, it's the same thing. Minus 30 is equal to, and I'm going to go ahead and put these together. That is negative 14j minus 3. All I did was add the negative 5j and the negative 9j, which gave me negative 14j over there. Now I've got negative 5j minus 30 equals negative 14j minus 3. I add the 14j to both sides and get 9j. I add the 30 to both sides and get the 27. And I just added 30 to both sides. I added 14j to both sides. If you want to see it, you could write it yourself. I divide by 9 and get 3. We really need to move right along here because I want to finish. I'm going to distribute to 7. So I'm going to write 17p is equal to 70p minus 140 minus 19. And I'm going to do a couple of things at one time. A very common mistake is to want to subtract the 17p. It's not wrong, it just makes more work for yourself. It is easier to subtract the 70p, and then you end up with the negative 53p is equal to negative 159. And that goes in 3 times very nicely. And p is equal to 3. I'm just dividing by negative 53. And it looks like we have 1 or 2 more. Oh, there is a negative outside of the parentheses. And one way to think of this is that this is, when you see a negative outside parentheses like this, I just want to show you something. When you see this negative outside here, there really is a 1, even though you don't see it, there really is a 1 in front of it. And so it's being multiplied by negative 1. You can say it's the opposite of, and that has to be distributed, but it's up to you. That is 9 minus 9m. And on this side, we have negative 18m minus 45. And we're almost done. I can add the 18m to both sides and get 9m. I can subtract the 9 and get negative 54. And m is equal to negative 6 when I divide by 9 on both sides. I'm speaking loud enough. I think I am. I think my microphone should pick me up. I'm going to distribute the 3 to both parts. We're almost done. I have 19 plus 11h equals 3 times 16 is 48. H minus 18. And again, we're almost done. I could subtract the 11h and add the 18. So I'm going to add the 18 to 19 and get 37. I'm going to subtract the 11h from both sides and get 37h. And I'm going to divide by 37 and get the 1. And sure enough, if I think about that for just a second, if I think about the 1 goes right here and the 1 goes right there, 19 plus 11 really is 37, and 48 minus 18 really is 37. One more. Now this is definitely my last one, so let's make it the best. I'm going to go ahead and distribute. I get negative 48t plus 12. I have negative 60 minus 60t. I'm going to go ahead and add 60t to both sides and get 12t. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 12 from both sides and get negative 72. And dividing by 12 gives me negative 6. Okay, guys, try it yourself. Hopefully it works out for you. I managed to miss 2 questions. Hopefully you can learn from my silly mistakes. I can't believe I made the same one twice. Well, you all have a good time. Get your practice in. It's really important. Bye.